Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Love Your Dogs podcast. This podcast is heart led, experience based, real life, and not dry science. My name is Bree Drake. I'm a holistic dog health educator and a certified holistic pet health coach. And welcome back. I'm always glad that you guys are coming back and listening to me babble on about how we can better care for our dogs. I'm noticing something as I did the intro here that, I say this is real life, and it is real life because there's some things where I'm like, maybe I should have cleaned this up before I started. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a flea comb on the counter, and that metal bowl is a bowl of Kin and Kind flea and tick shampoo, and there's lots of fleas in there and maybe a tick or two. Then I have Pond's favorite toy. And this Yeti loadout box is where I keep a lot of my go-to first aid items, lots of homeopathics and different balms and bandaging and stuff like that. So I was just noticing that, and there's all kinds of other stuff in the background too, but I won't get into all that. But this is real life. This is a dog podcast, so it is okay that we have some dog things in the background. And I do like to showcase that flea comb and that bowl of flea water is always on the counter because, as I talked about several episodes ago, a flea comb truly is the most simple, effective tool when it comes to managing pests and protecting our dogs from pests. There's lots of other products on the market, and it's something I've been thinking about that I will be posting about in more detail soon. There's so many essential oil products and topicals, collars, internal products, powders and tinctures. And at the end of the day, when we use those types of things, when we say, okay, instead of a conventional med, instead of a Bravecto chew, we're going to use Wondercide collar and Wondercide spray every single day. And that's kind of allopathically minded when we're just doing a one-for-one swap. So although the Wondercide is a safer natural alternative, it still isn't benign. It can still be disruptive and burdensome to our dogs when used in excess. So when used unnecessarily all the time, just because we're so fearful, and we replace that Bravecto with that Wondercide, if that makes sense. So remember that a holistic approach to pest prevention, and I want to touch on this because it's getting warmer and I know a lot of you are thinking about it. Check out my guide on my website. I have a full guide to holistic flea and tick support. But remember that the holistic approach is starting with your dog internally, starting with feeding a species appropriate diet, getting lots of omega-3s in there, sardines, mackerel, hair anchovy, or high quality fish oil. That is supportive of our dog's skin so with Pine, remember, he's had fleas since July. So coming up on a year, we just had steady flea pressure, just is what it is. But because he is fed a species appropriate diet, because he is moving, and because I give him some gentle herbal support on a regular basis, and he's not loaded up with toxins, he's not full of vaccines and flea and tick preventatives and antibiotics. Like, he's not loaded up with toxins. He's fed well. His immune system, hopefully this year, is going to be a lot more developed and mature in regulating and not overreacting. But overall, this whole year, even as a young dog, he hasn't had any major skin reactions. He had an ear flare up and he had a little bit of hair loss towards the very end of the warm season. Actually, this was just in January. And other than that, though, he's not what you would expect a typical flea-ridden dog to be like. I mean, I grew up with dogs that had fleas, and their skin was so red and so itchy and open sores. It's not going to be like that. And that's why holistic approach is so important. The holistic approach isn't just get rid of all fleas and ticks at all costs, although that's really what we want. And those words have probably come out of my mouth more times than one over the last several months. It's about supporting the terrain first and getting your yard in order. Beneficial nematodes. Wondercide yard spray is great when used minimally, only as needed. And, getting rid of that leaf litter and pine straw buildup in those shaded, more moist areas, focusing the nematodes there. It's a full management system. It's not just stop the Bravecto and spray Wondercide and use a Wondercide collar. I'm sorry, Wondercide. I keep using them as the example. There's other options, but that's just the example here I'm going to keep sticking with. It's not just swap Bravecto for the Wondercide. There's a whole management system to it. Feed your dog well, make sure they're moving limp, helping support detox pathways, and take care of your yard. It can be managed. It doesn't have to be a full-on slaughter of fleas and ticks, and check manually. Use that flea comb. So the flea comb just set me off on that tangent. It's spring. I wanted to bring that up because it's important. I know a lot of you guys are thinking about it, and I do have some great notes put together for more a comprehensive way of explaining what I was trying to say about how a lot of what we consider holistic by just making a swap to something natural is actually still allopathically minded. It's actually still suppressing symptoms. It's just kill all the ticks instead of supporting the dog. So we have to focus on supporting the dog and then layering in that natural support only as needed. Let's see what else. I talked a lot about vaccines the past couple of days this week, and there's one important message I wanted to bring up about that without it taking over the entire episode because I love talking about vaccines. And it's hard for me getting messages online and comments and getting the feedback from those of you I work with one-on-one that you're feeling cornered into giving your dog another vaccine, especially like cases where senior dogs that are 10, 11 years old say they have an ear infection or they need a routine dental and they can't find a vet that will see them unless they do another rabies vaccine. And that's where the rabies vaccine itself is already probably the harshest vaccine up there with leptospirosis. And it's one that, when repeated, is really not good. And especially as our dogs are aging, especially since they're still protected, they've had 2, 3, 4 rabies shots already in their life. That last rabies shot can really put them into a fast decline. I've seen it happen a lot. I've read a lot about it. I've seen it happen with people I've worked with. And it just breaks my heart that we're feeling cornered into doing something that's protecting our dogs and it's supposed to be for their health and for their good. But yet we have a pit in our stomach. We're in tears. We really, I think about if I had to give Pine vaccines at this point and how it would just gosh, it would destroy me. And I cannot, I'm so frustrated with getting these heartbreaking stories from people who have travel plans and can't bring their dog because of vaccine obstacles, or there's a specific training they can't go to because of vaccine obstacles. And I know that there are little tricks to the trade. There's ways to be savvy and navigate it, but not everybody has that savviness and that ability. And even those who have tried, eventually your luck can run out and there could be additional verification steps that rule out your cleverness and your creativity, if you get my gist. If you don't, I'm sorry. If you don't, I highly suggest that you join the unvaccinated pet community on Facebook. That is a great place to get lots of advice and tips and strategies from people who have been at this a long time in a safe space. These are things that I don't really want to talk about publicly. But anyway, some people really are rule followers and really want to do the right thing and are terrified to bend the rules, even if it means advocating for their dog. So while I know that there's so many of us that are like, F the system, I don't care. I'm going to live off the grid. My dog's not going to be a part of society. If they are, I'm going to use fake vaccine records. And a lot of people do that. And a lot of people have full confidence doing that and are great at doing that. But there's so many other dog parents out there who, we wish they would get a backbone. We wish they would just stick it to them. But they're rule followers and they're worried, and it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have to tiptoe around and be sneaky and be worried about getting caught or getting in trouble. We shouldn't be having to exclude our dogs from things we want them to be a part of, from training, from grooming. And someone brought up a great comment about that and I completely agree with this, that I do think you should learn to groom your dog at home. And that grooming can be stressful and maybe overdone. And if you do it at home, what a wonderful way to manually check your dog on a regular basis. I've heard some horror stories from groomers. Groomers are important because they do notice things that have gone unnoticed by the dog's family at home because they're not grooming their dog at home. They're not paying attention. So groomers often uncover and discover a lot of health issues. So what better reason to groom your dog at home, or have someone come to your home to groom your dog? And daycares, boarding facilities, I don't like them. I don't like them for dogs. I think They are a breeding ground for illness, and they're also very stressful to dogs. A lot of the staff at these daycares and these boarding facilities don't really have a lot of training in dog behavior, and dogs are just having a free-for-all. They're wrestling, they're stressed out, they're in group settings the entire time, never getting a break, never getting time to themselves. And the employees working there, like I said, aren't trained in dog behavior, so aren't picking up on these signs that a dog might need a break. So they come home exhausted, and dog parents are like, oh, that's great. They had such a great time. They're so tired. Now I don't have to deal with them. But they've had a very stressful day. So I don't like dog barks. I don't like boarding facilities, and I think grooming can be done at home. And training is the one thing that I really loved when I was bringing Skip to group trainings. It's a great opportunity for them to learn how to be around other dogs and be calm around other dogs. And it was great distraction impulse training to be performing and doing agility or doing stays or walking off leash at heel with other dogs around. It was great training. I really liked that for Skip. So that's one thing that unfortunately I haven't been able to do for Pine, not only because of vaccine status, that could have been easily worked around for me, but they won't accept intact dogs, the ones I had contacted here. So it's just overall a huge bummer that those of us who are doing things right and going the extra mile and rising above the standard of care, we're treated as outsiders and we're excluded. And like I said, I know there's so many of us that are okay with that. And for the most part, I am. For the most part, I've grown a lot and I've learned about what dogs really prefer when it comes to lifestyle. They like steadiness and structure and routine. A lot of times they would rather be left home than put in those situations where training would have helped them to be a better dog out at a coffee shop, at a big event. I've learned that they don't really need that. So to me, it's okay and easier to accept. I don't need training, group training. I don't need dog parks. I don't need grooming. I don't need boarding. So it really, for me, vaccine status isn't a huge deal. There are some travel hiccups that we will likely run into. My husband loves to travel, and sometimes I stop being a homebody and go with him. There's instances where we wanted to go into Canada, for example, and we can't do that. Maybe we could, but it worries me a little. So anyway, I wanted to share on some of that remember, I know the vaccine obstacles are frustrating when we have tools to prove that our dogs are protected without constantly revaccinating them or vaccinating them at all. We have tools. We have on our side that businesses set their own policies. So hopefully there will be a shift in businesses being more accommodating of those who use nosodes and natural exposure to immunize their dogs, or tighter tests. Hopefully we have businesses that are more accommodating, educating themselves, because we're the clients that they want. They need clients that have vitally healthy dogs that care. I mean, it's going to make their jobs easier when they have more grounded, well-behaved, healthy dogs. So that's the hope we can have. I have hope that businesses will slowly evolve over time. I've seen it. I've gotten feedback from businesses throughout the country that accept titers and that use nosos in their boarding facilities. For example, the legal stuff as far as rabies goes, that's if that changes at all, is going to take a long time, unfortunately. And I don't want to be pessimistic about that, but I don't see that changing anytime soon because there's a lot of fear around rabies, and because it can impact humans, it's just something that we really can't move the needle on. That's the one most people are scared of, but we have to do the best that we can to advocate for our dogs. I'll leave you with that. Join the unvaccinated pet community on Facebook to learn more about how to do that. If you're confused or worried or scared and don't know what to do next, do that and try to, unfortunately, have your dog exist outside of society as much as you possibly can. And I have an expert that I'll be talking to soon. I know I keep mentioning I have guests, and I finally have some lined up where we'll dig more into that. We're talking to a dog behaviorist who will hopefully give us a lot of insight into what kind of lifestyle our dogs really prefer. And then that will help you understand, or help you to be more accepting of the fact that You don't need to bring your dog to every event, travel with them everywhere. Um, it sucks. I know I've always been the one who's like, take your dog everywhere, do everything with your dog. But now I'm kind of gradually trying to understand and try to meet a dog's needs more. And like, do they really want that? And what does that mean for them from a vaccine perspective, from a safety perspective? I had someone comment recently on, gosh, when I was talking about not bringing Pine to that big outdoor wildlife expo a few weeks ago. They were like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I would never take my dog to something like that. There's too many dice rolls. And that it's exactly, I mean, there's so many dice rolls from what they're being exposed to and the other dogs. We don't know if the other dogs are aggressive, how well the other dog owners can control their dogs. There's so many unknowns. So gosh, I am rambling on for 17 minutes already. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to touch on some of those things that were happening in the social media space and what I'd been talking about recently. And Dr. William Falconer, you guys have heard talk about him a lot. He is a homeopathic veterinarian. He doesn't still practice and he doesn't have a social media presence. I think he has an account, but he's not active on social media. He very much stays under the radar. And I think it's bi-weekly. Every other week, he sends out an email. So if you're not already on his email list, you should be. And I hope reading through some of his most recent email will help to say, oh, yeah, I absolutely need this. He's amazing. I've learned a lot from him. I refer so many of you to his website, vitalanimal.com. It's a great resource for learning about all the things I talk about here, having to navigate vaccines and heartworm prevention, flea and tick prevention, homeopathy. He's a great resource. So I want to read through some of his most recent email because it is so great. He always gets me fired up. I'll go through a little lull and I'll get kind of soft where I'm screw the system. They're out to just profit off our dogs or poisoning our dogs. So like, well, this is what they have to do to care for so many dogs. I kind of go up and down. I try to ground myself in the reality of what's going on. But then I read stuff like this and it gets me fired up because I'm like, gosh, this is such a scam. They're profiting off of our dogs and keeping them sick. So, all right, so let's get into his email from this past week. So there is an article that appeared in the Vet Journal, which he reads, called The Fresh Pet Food Movement. The author is a vet nutritionist who cautions vets that they'll be asked about feeding pets. And they got to know about this trend away from kibble and cans to something more, human-like, real food, in other words. Unfortunately, it appears that she sees the trends but doesn't have enough data to judge whether this move to fresh food from kibble and cans is beneficial. That's one thing about vets that just drives me crazy. You know how indoctrinated they are when they truly believe that an animal, they are supposed to be experts on dogs and cats and small animals that they treat, right? And being an expert on these animals means that you need to know what their diet is supposed to be and what is species appropriate for them. And it is not dried little cookies, little toxic cookies. It is real food. It is a diverse whole prey diet. So it blows my mind that this article even exists, but let's get into it more. So unfortunately, Pierce, she sees the trends, but doesn't have enough data to judge whether this move to fresh food from kibble and cans is actually beneficial. I guess she's not seeing these amazing animals in day-to-day practice or believes that all reality depends on published peer-reviewed research, perhaps. So from her article, this says there is currently a paucity of research evaluating the impacts of feeding different diets to dogs or cats through their lifetime. Dr. Falconer goes on to say, when I had patients make the switch to fresh, they rarely, if ever, needed treatment. They were so healthy. The most rewarding ones came to me on a diet of the usual over-processed crap and made the switch to raw balanced feedings. Their coats got shiny, their eyes lost the gunk, they gained a new sparkle, their breath was a pleasure to be near, and most, if not all, of their symptoms went away. And that's one thing I was just talking to my husband about the other day. Pine, when we went on that little adventure, we went to a friend's house here in South Carolina. We were outside all day and it was hot. So Pine was panting pretty much the whole day. We were riding around on golf carts and side by sides, panting in my ear, in my face, and completely no smell. He has the freshest breath. He is coming up on 17 months old and he still has the freshest breath ever from eating a species appropriate diet. So anyway, I digress. Dr. William Falconer says that his most startling in the early days was the ADR cat, a cat that wasn't doing okay, he couldn't get in for homeopathy as he was too full of patience. After recommending a switch to raw Cornish game hens from kibble, when he finally did have an opening, her awestruck owner thanked him profusely, adding that Texas Ray, the cat, no longer needed his help. And then he says, let's tease apart some of the concerns from this professional's view of the movement towards fresh, as it may help you navigate a vet visitor too. So, from the article, the dietary guidelines for Americans emphasize choosing nutrient-dense foods that contain vitamins, minerals, and other health-promoting components with minimal added sugar, saturated fats, and sodium. These are whole foods such as vegetables, fruits, whole grains, seafood, eggs, beans, peas, lentils, unsalted nuts and seeds, fat-free and low dairy products, and lean meats and poultry. We finally admitted the food pyramid based on cherry-picked data blaming fat as the inducer of heart attacks was wrong. The resulting low-fat craze led us to the current obesity and diabetes epidemic in the West. And salt is not a cause of high blood pressure of any note. Insulin resistance, a result of all those low-fat, high-carb foods we were told were healthy choices, was and remains the chief elevator of those numbers. And low-salt diets push insulin resistance. Whoops. Then, the COVID mess changed things. The author sees those dark years of the pandemic as perhaps a key in making more people move to fresh food for their pets, but she missed the key point. We learned we can no longer trust most doctors, and that would include nutrition advice, of course, because neither veterinarians nor MDs receive any significant education in these areas. In 4 years of vet school, we got 2 afternoons of nutrition training from a Hills pet food rep. He basically says, for any problem, for crystals in the urine, for diarrhea, constipation, for kidney failure, you just feed the prescription Hills diet that was made for that ailment, and so on. So his head still spins, seeing this for what it could have been and what I had to learn years later after discovering just how bad kibble was. And then he adds some benefit here. While concerned there's not enough research, is there ever for some people? She does cite some showing benefits of fresh food feeding, an example of her analysis paralysis at work. In several studies, the digestibility of less processed diets compared to more processed commercial kibble or canned foods was found to be higher, but the long-term effects of consuming a diet with higher digestibility on health, disease, and longevity of dogs and cats are unknown. So wait, we need long-term data to prove increased digestibility is a good thing? And then she goes on to discuss some imbalance concerns. She cites the movement to human-grade foods is significant. A 2019 study found that the proportion of pets exclusively fed conventional diets, commercially available heat-processed products, typically kibble or canned foods, decreased from 65 to 13% in dogs, and from 85 to 32% in cats, indicating that pet owners are increasingly interested in feeding their pets other food forms. But then she also cites a study done on 200 home-prepared recipes and finding deficiencies, including most frequently calcium, phosphorus, and vitamin D deficiencies. I'd also be concerned if those deficiencies were a result of a mono-diet recipe following. And come on, if you're feeding bones and raw liver regularly, those top nutrients shouldn't be an issue. Those deficiencies in a recipe would be covered by varying the diet. Remember that no wolf or puma follows a recipe. They eat prey, and it varies with seasons and prey population fluctuation. So I want to add my little comments here. Yes, I think that is a major issue that vets have with raw feeding and cooking for dogs at home. And I have issue with this as well. So many people are, making chicken and rice and peas and carrots, and they're following a recipe that they found in a blog or on Pinterest. And people ask me all the time, do you have a recipe for what you feed your dog? And there is no recipe. I follow a feeding calculator on feedreal.com. They have a great feeding calculator, and that feeding calculator tells me how much raw meaty bones I need, how much secreting organs, and how much liver, and how much muscle meat and fish. And then I follow that as closely as I can, but I do some give and take because we're achieving balance over time. And I'm always switching it up every time I place an order, whether it's for a pre-made diet or pre-made formula or for individual ingredients to prepare the raw meals at home myself. I'm always switching it up. always getting different proteins, different organs, different raw meaty bones, because, like Dr. Falconer says here, no wolf or puma follows a recipe. They eat prey, and it varies with seasons and prey population fluctuations. Our dogs are made to thrive on a whole prey diet, whole prey diversity. So I can understand why veterinarians, for the most part, are um, averse to people preparing food at home, because a lot of people do this. A lot of people follow a recipe and will feed that same recipe forever. Now, arguably, I think it still could be better than kibble in the long run. But yes, deficiencies could present themselves when dogs are fed the same thing every single day, especially when it's not including a calcium source. It's not including raw meaty bones and organs. And that's where our dogs can become deficient. But then we also argue that although kibble claims to include all of these beneficial vitamins and minerals, they have that spray, that synthetic vitamin and mineral pack that's sprayed on at the end of the process. A lot of it isn't even bioavailable to their dogs. So that still leads to deficiencies and even excesses as well. So anyway, stay away from the mono diet. I'm always talking about rotation. We always want to be feeding our dogs a large variety. And that doesn't just have to be in the food. That can be in leftovers from our meals, little handouts of healthy things for Pine. Anytime I'm cooking, I'll give him little bits of fresh veggies, or I'll give him a little bit of grass-fed, grass-finished butter, eggshell membranes, a little bit of honey. Keep it diverse. Always be giving them different things, keeping their diet diverse, keeping their gut happy and healthy. All right, this next section is called It's Costly. This one brings a grin to those of us who see through all of this. The good doctor recognizes how cheap kibble is compared to fresh food, whether homemade or purchased. No kidding, Sherlock. Cheap grains and byproducts from the meat world are bound to be cheap. The U.S. government subsidizes corn and wheat and soybeans so that a small regenerative farmer could never grow those crops profitably. Not to mention, most of those crops are now GMO, so they come with a side of glyphosate. And 4D cows and pigs, dead, diseased, dying, or disabled. That's 4D. Probably zero costs except the labor to render the meat into meal. Well know where these cheaper foods became exceedingly costly, don't we? Vet expenses. Garbage in, garbage out applies not only to computers, but to biological systems as well. It's no coincidence that pet obesity and diabetes have shot up right alongside the humans plagued with these metabolic disasters. The common thread is cheap food. Listen to those who have done it, rather than take the advice of a board-certified veterinary nutritionist who likely rarely encounters the healthy raw-fed pets that we see in holistic med and applaud. Listen to and talk to those who have actually chosen to feed real food to their pets. Better yet, get your hands on some of those animals, pull up an upper lip, and look for the gleaming white and take a whiff of what real dog breath smells like. And that's nothing, literally nothing. A homeopathic colleague from decades back used to say, those who say it can't be done need to get out of the way of those who are doing it. That's a recommendation you can take to the bank. So yes, I completely agree with all of that. I haven't read that full article yet. Maybe I'll put it in the show notes in case you guys want to read it. It's obviously laughable. Dr. Falconer did a great job of picking it apart and giving us the messages that we should be clinging to. And that is, like he said, we need to look at those who are doing it, like myself. Feeding Pine a raw diet, when I switched Skip and Ann to a raw diet or fresh food diet, it changed everything for them. The proof is in the dog and what they look like, what their health is like. And he is the healthiest, shiniest dog. And with constant flea pressure, still has the most beautiful skin. He has the most beautiful gleaming white teeth, no foul breath, the best poop. So you have to talk to people who are actually doing it and don't let vets stray you away. And then he goes into a little bit here. We'll try to keep it under 40 minutes. I'll keep going a little. It's so good. So he titled this section, Surgeons as Heroes. I used to be in awe of surgeons going through vet school. I mean, it was pretty cool to bring a troubled animal to a state of anesthesia, open them up, fix the wrong, and sew them back up, all the better for the effort. That viewpoint changed during my homeopathic training in the early 90s, where we learned the only 3 possible outcomes of any medical intervention, including those from the natural modalities, are cure, palliation, and suppression. And it turned out, unless the surgeon was mending broken bones, or like me in the early days in large animal practice, bringing a calf into the world, that bossy couldn't manage or an untwisting a stomach, the rest was suppression. And suppressing a disease always comes back to bite you. So his heroes are no longer surgeons. They are skilled homeopaths who bring miracles to the suffering with tiny doses of substances, some of which were poisons before they underwent ultra dilution and succussion. This method is safe in skilled hands and very effective in curing chronic disease, though this is a process by definition, and it takes patience and attention to details in order to work. And I completely agree with that. I would always get a second opinion if, so long as it wasn't an emergency surgery to mend bones or save Pine's life, I would, as long as he is stable and safe, seek out the guidance of a homeopath before making a surgical decision, or at least a holistic vet. So he says here, in cases where there is a tumor involved or suspicion of cancer, work with a homeopathic vet who sees a lot of cancer cases. Clean up any dietary deficiencies, stop all pesticide use, and make an informed choice whether removal is best as the patient progresses under treatment. So yeah, we will stop there. He is awesome. He sends out a great email like that every other week. I think it's every other week. And he also has a membership, which I'm a part of. And admittedly, I don't attend as many of the calls as I would like. He does 1 hour long call once a month where he meets with his members. Hey, buddy, here's Pine. And he's just awesome. He's so wonderful to learn from. So subscribe to his email if you're not already. Take some of his courses. He does have some free courses. Hey, bud, Pine is ready. He's ready to go for a walk. So that means I've got to wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening. And hopefully in the next episode or two, we will have our first guest on the Love Your Dogs podcast so that you can stop listening to me ramble on, because as much as I love talking about this stuff, I have a hard time just staring at myself here on my computer and rambling. It's not as fun as having a back and forth conversation. So looking forward to adding that into the mix. And remember that East Perry Sheepskin products, all of you listening can get 15% off using code TailsWell15. And remember that my favorite supplement brands, even though I'm not a huge supplement person, are Vengeance. Vengeance Motherboard for Pets is something I started Pine on at 8 weeks, and I continue to use, and I will use it myself, especially if I feel like I'm coming down with something. That is a wonderful product that if you don't use consistently, that you could definitely use during high pressure tick season, especially if you live somewhere where there's a lot of Lyme disease and other tick-borne illnesses. That is a great formula to add to your dog to, we'll take it back to the beginning. You can add it to your dog's food as part of that full management system, like full pest management system, because supporting the immune system and manual checks are going to be huge when it comes to ticks. And Adored Beast Apothecary, they have something for everything. Their Gut Soothe and Healthy Gut really helped Pine in his ear flare, supporting his gut and helping to restore any imbalance that was going on there. They have a yeast protocol. They have Rebalancer, which is a great single simple product to use after vaccination. I have a vaccine detox protocol that goes into more detail on how we can help our dogs that have already been vaccinated or recently vaccinated or have upcoming unavoidable vaccines. Rebalancer is a great product that you can grab, follow the instructions. But if you want a more detailed protocol that dives in a little more and has some rabies specific remedies, grab that detox protocol on my website. But yeah, Adored Beast has so many wonderful things. I'm trying to think of what else. Their liver tonic, Healthy Gut, Gut Soothe, Jump for Joints. I mean, just a wonderful company. If your dog's going through anything and you want something supportive, that's who I would look to first. Adored Beast and Vengeance are 2 companies that I really trust. And yeah, thank you guys for being here. I hope that was informative, and enjoy the rest of your lovely day. We'll see you next time. Love your dogs.